those have similarities between the two genres. But when we get down to the actual structure of what the game wants the player to do, I think that there are some big differences between them. Moving away from the CRPGs now, I wanted to expand upon something that we talked about on the last episode, which was when I talked about Metroidvanias. And,
yes, you love them.
I do, except of course for the one that I talked about on that particular episode. For me, Metroidvanias are up there among my all-time favorites, probably along with, like the epic RPGs, which I'm usually very fond with, cozy games, and immersive sims, which are one of my all-time favorites, probably at the top. But Metroidvanias, I think, are really interesting because they have such a very long lineage, as many people are aware, because I've said it so many times that it's getting to be a dead horse that I'm beating, but that I have a very wishy-washy, very love-hate relationship when it comes to Souls games.
Yes, as is my relationship with most CRPGs. We're just doing a love-hate show.
We're doing a love-hate show again. Yeah, this is terrific. This is just for the fans. Souls-like games do share some similarities to Metroidvanias. I thought that it would be kind of useful to talk a little bit about things that Metroidvanias do that Souls-likes typically don't, or don't focus on.
Fun?
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, having played several entries in these genres, is that a Souls-like will usually frame itself as being an interconnected world where you unlock the ability to go from one area to another, but you do so by mostly going through boss battles or challenges that are combat related, so that you are able to get to a point where you unlock the ability to go back to previous areas that you had been to. That there is a challenge that you have to go to, that there is a humility that you have to deal with, that you have to get better at in order to overcome a challenge.
Like it's a boss fight.
Yeah.
But in Metroidvania, it's typically not a boss fight. It's typically some item or upgrade you have to get.
Exactly. There's a point in Metroidvanias where they will get you into a situation. I just played Fist, actually, which is one of those very titles, that will get you into a situation that you actually can't get out of until you collect and upgrade an item that allows you to do something that you previously couldn't do.
Yeah,
so,
that's the same kind of deal that Zelda usually does, too.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because also Koji Igarashi, when he talked about creating Bloodstained, he said specifically that Zelda Link to the Past was his biggest inspiration for that. Not Metroids, not Castlevanias, that it was Zelda specifically. And I can see that because the structure is very similar even there. What they do is they get you into a situation where you then have to get some kind of an upgrade that allows you to do something that you previously could not do. And then they let you use that in order to get out of the situation that you are now in. And then, when they do get you to some kind of a boss battle or challenge, it's focused on using the new skill that you got to help you through that situation.
Right.
But then, you get to use that to go back to previous areas and uncover secrets and explore more of the world that you previously couldn't get to. I think that what's really interesting is that a Metroidvania focuses far more on exploration than Souls games do, where Souls games are very focused on the challenge of the game, to get you over these challenges, which are these big, dangerous areas, bosses, enemies, environmental hazards that keep coming at you continuously, that you need to overcome and get more powerful so that you can move forward. And so they still have the interconnected world, but the interconnected world is based on your ability to overcome that challenge. Metroidvanias are focused on keeping you, engaged with getting new skills that you then use to overcome the challenge and get to new areas that you previously couldn't get to. And I guess that just interests me more because it has this feeling of progression where you're uncovering the world because you are understanding things by way of new abilities and tools that they're giving you, which is just not the same focus. I think that there's just much more focus on exploration in Metroidvania titles. There's a bit of crossover here. As you probably know, there's a lot of games that will lend themselves to having upgrades. Like Darksiders 3 is the first one that comes to mind. In that, Fury gets new forms that she can then use in order to access new areas, but it also still has the same kind of Souls formula where I die, my currency gets left on the ground, I have to go through a challenge to get there, and so these get integrated occasionally, but I think it is really the main difference between whether it is going to be a challenge that is put in front of me so that I can advance, or that I am getting tools that then those challenges help inform because I have gotten those new tools. I think that's the big difference. The exploration elements, I think, are also a big difference, and that the big similarity between them is the interconnected worlds, these different biomes and being able to go between them. But how you access that and how they interconnect is very different between Souls-Likes and Metroidvanias. I don't know if you've played a lot of like the Metroidvania style titles. I know you've tried your hand at a couple of the Souls-Likes, but
not so much.
Okay.
Side scrollers are typically not my deal, and a lot of the Metroidvania tend to be side scrollers.
There are examples of the 3D like obviously Metroid Prime was the 3D iteration, and like
there's definitely some, but the majority I see.
Yeah.
I think the one I was a little bit curious about, but have not played and haven't really thought about it since, was actually Tunic.
Oh, Tunic. See, it's interesting you bring up Tunic, because Tunic is one of those games that takes a lot from the Souls kind of franchise. The way that it does combat, because it does want to do tactical combat.
Sure.
And it also does the thing where, all of your, light or whatever they're collecting in the game gets dropped on the ground and you go back to checkpoints and stuff. And it can be very difficult in that regard, and there are, like, boss battles and boss fights and stuff like that.
Sure.
But you do also get some tools, and you get abilities and knowledge throughout the course of the game that lend itself a little bit more to Metroidvania. And I think that the style and aesthetic made people think of, like, Zelda. Like, it's a fox.
Have you played
Zelda.
Tunic?
I have played Tunic, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know from hearing about it, it was very much in the way of the entire game is more so about the knowledge you get and understanding the systems in the game and unlocking the secrets in the game to learn how to do things.
One of the most interesting things about Tunic is that instead of just giving you a bunch of stuff, they more or less focus on the idea that there's a language that you do not understand, and you get these words, you learn the translation of different words, and by translating these, you now understand better how to play the game and also the game world. That was the best part of it.
So as I understood, it was mostly exploration. Exploration and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, there are exploration elements to it. The reason why I stopped playing, though, is that it gets to a point where it is much more focused on getting over these, like, hell map kind of places where there's just, like, here's, like, 5 slime creatures that will just try to gobble you up, and here's a few, barrel traps that are going to set on fire if you get too close to them, and there are these places where it felt like I was supposed to understand the thing, where maybe if I did have, style where I'm trying to learn a new mechanic, or I had that new mechanic in front of me, I would have been better prepped for it. there's a bridge. It always happens with bridges in Souls-Likes, it feels like, but there's this log that you have to cross to get to this new area, and there's a swordsman with a shield on the log, and he doesn't fall off, obviously, but like the second you try to attack him, like the shield comes up, boing, and your little tunic doesn't do anything, and then when he hits you, you'll like fall off the log and you die.
So the trick is you need to roll the log.
Apparently, you need to try to figure out a way to roll the log. I do not have
that's my guess.
Yeah, there's probably a way to do it. I don't know. I don't know. But that is one of those interesting cases where, for me, that felt far more like a Souls-like, but in the 2D5 art style, or the 2.5D art style, that made it look a little bit more like a Zelda kind of game. It's when it gets into the we have to get good at the combat element where it lost me a bit from that aspect. Your typical Zelda game is, I get my chain shot. Now all of these little places where there were chain shot holes that I've seen around, I can actually access. That wonder and discovery that you usually feel, where at the beginning of the game, it looks like there's something up on top of that cliff, but I can't get onto that cliff right now, and I don't know what all of these little, dots in the sky are until you get the right tool, and then go, oh, this is how I get to that place that I saw 5 hours ago, back at the starting area.
Now I've got to retrace my steps and go all the way back to find out what was there.
Now I gotta retrace my steps. Yes, and in a lot of them, that's exactly what I end up doing. That is similar in Souls-Likes. You'll get more powerful, you will upgrade your stats, and you will get better weapons, and that will allow you to get through the challenge, but the challenge is mostly combat-based. The challenge is trying to overcome the difficulty of an area and not uncover the tools that you need in order to access the area. And I find that to be one of the main differences. And when I find Metroidvanias so engaging and interesting, it's because the best among them will start you off and you really have nothing at all to speak of. But they'll give you these illusions or places that look like you can access them, but you can't do it yet. And the uncovering of the tools you need in order to go back and access them is one of the most fun, engaging things that helps with pacing and exploration and engaging with the game world that I have seen in gaming, bar none. It's just one of the best ways to where you'll see something and say, I don't know how to get there, but I know that by the time I get to the end of the game, I will have the ability to do so. And then they deliver on it afterward. And it's not because I don't know how to combat good. It's because the tools are going to present themselves to me, and I will be able to get someplace that I normally couldn't, and uncover a secret in the world that I normally wouldn't be able to yet. So I find that that's a really interesting design philosophy difference, and it's one of the reasons why there are Souls-Likes that I do like and that I will play, and I find interesting, because the interconnectedness of the world and the idea of overcoming a challenge and being able to loop back to previous areas and, upgrades and new ways to play the game, those have similarities between the two genres. But when we get down to the actual structure of what the game wants the player to do, I think that there are some big differences between them. Some that I do like, and some that I really don't. I wanted to just kind of put that out there as one of the big reasons why I have a different relationship between a couple genres, and why I think of the different genres the way I do. So you haven't played a lot of Metroidvanias. You have played a couple of the Souls games. I'm wondering if I'm talking out of my ass here about, the nature of Souls games and how those play.
Probably not. I mean, if that's your take on it, then I don't think it's talking out of your ass. That's how you feel about them.
Perfect.
Honestly.
I love when I talk about them. Yes.
Like, I remember fondly enjoying Castlevania Curse of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I played that, and that one was not quite the same thing as a Metroidvania because it was a newer Castlevania, which kind of moved out of the realm of the typical Metroidvania side-scrolly type deal. But that one, I guess, was still in the vein of you get new tools to do things with to overcome it, but it was still like a action hack and slashy game.
Sure.
You know, Castlevania Curse of Darkness I enjoyed, but again, that was more in the PS2 era of puzzles and fighting, and you got your little demons you summoned.
Sure.
Who each had abilities to help you as tools to overcome challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, but it feels like a different type of game than what you've been describing. So.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I did play Simon's Quest back in the day on NES, which would probably be
Whoa.
more akin to a Metroidvania.
Whoa. Yeah.
Or a classic Castlevania, actually, because it was like one of the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I did enjoy that, but I don't have quite the nostalgia for those types of games that would make it so I really enjoy them these days.
Yeah, and the thing is that I don't mind 2D side-scrolly games. Like, I don't mind that genre. I think it's just interesting from a perspective standpoint to see the game world in that way.
I generally don't care for them as much. We've come to such a point in technology where me looking at the graphics of 2D and whatnot and sprites, I'm just like, this doesn't do it for me quite the same.
I will also say, though, that there are several examples of Souls-Likes that are using that same 2D art style, the side-scrolling art style, because I've played Salt and Sanctuary, and I've played Ghost Song, and, oh god, what was the other one that they did that for?
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to think. Hollow Knight's, again, one of those ones that I think people usually think of as a Metroidvania, maybe because of the art style, but it is very much a Souls-like when you play it. Yeah. It very much is. So anyway, I guess I'm wondering how other people feel, if there are some other fundamental differences between Souls-likes and Metroidvanias that I'm not talking about here, and if you see games that do a good job of integrating the different concepts together, because I'm always looking for ones that have done a good job of that.